Today is Thursday, April 27th, and you're listening to Plastic Weekly. Today I talked to Kimanda Jarzebiak, who thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to attach a world-class climbing gym to a high school? And then she did just that. Stick around. Before we get to today's episode, I need to mention a few things. First, a huge congratulations to Alana Yip for becoming the first Canadian woman to make it to an IFSC World Cup final. I'm definitely not a competitive athlete, but I know I'd be feeling a lot of pressure to match that performance after all of the media attention she's received. So I hope that her success has her motivated to continue training as hard as she does. Every athlete sees a lot of unexpected ups and downs, but she's clearly on an upward trajectory, and she can definitely become a consistent finalist if she wants to be. So big ups to Alana. I know a lot of young climbers who are super excited to have such an exceptional role model doing big things. Secondly, there's something fun coming out of Toronto that you'll all probably enjoy. If you didn't hear the IFSC commentator Charlie Bosco mention it, there's now an IFSC World Cup Fantasy League where you can select your podium favorites for each World Cup and compare your picks against me and everyone else. Search IFSC World Cup Fantasy League on Facebook and you'll find either their page or the group. Either one leads you to the Google Doc that you can use to enter your picks. So check that out and enter your choices for this weekend's World Cup in Nanjing. See if you can beat me or Angel from onbouldering.com. Although you got to figure out the name of my team first. So good luck with that. And lastly, a quick update on the most boring side project on the internet. This past weekend's bouldering final in Chongqing was the shortest bouldering final since I've started counting in 2014. 45 seconds shorter than Baku 2014 at 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 45 seconds. Now, 2 World Cups clearly isn't enough info to draw any real conclusions, but it does show that with the new 4-minute rule, there can still be quite a range of durations. Meiringen just a few weeks ago was 13 minutes and 30 seconds longer than Chongqing. After Nanjing this weekend, I'll probably add a page to the website so you can follow along with this complete snoozer of a side project, so keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. But let's get to the main attraction. I'd seen pictures of an incredible wall on the internet. It was huge, big enough to house one of North America's only IFSC certified 15-meter speed walls. It had beautiful angles and a full-height retractable door that opened to the sprawling fields outside. It was in a place I'd never heard of, Central Saanich, a small rural town of only 16,000 people, a few miles north of Victoria on Vancouver Island. I couldn't understand how such an impressive wall ended up in such an unlikely place. In May of 2015, I flew out to Victoria to experience this gym in person at the 2015 Canadian Difficulty and Speed Nationals, which ran concurrently as an IFSC Speed World Cup at the same gym. After seeing it in person, I had even more questions. This gym was built attached to the back end of this rural high school. Nowhere else in North America is there a wall like this, so what crazy set of circumstances led to this being built here? This week, I finally found out. I managed to squeeze in a phone call with Kimanda Jarzebiak, who explained to me the unique history, geography, and business model that led to this gym called the Boulders.
All right. With me on the line right now is Kimanda Jarzebiak, the Chair and Director of Operations of the Boulders Climbing Gym Society in Central Saanich, Victoria. Thanks so much for taking my call, Kimanda.
Thanks for having me on.
I understand you're about to fly out to China. Can you tell us what you're doing out there?
I am helping Malik Taleb, who's the manager of the national bouldering team, at 2 World Cup events, one in China and one in Japan. And in between those two, I've organized a trip to Morioka, which is Victoria's sister city. And Morioka is hosting us. They're paying for our accommodation and food, and they're letting us train at the great facility there.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I hope that's a good time. Thanks for taking a little bit of time in between, all the craziness of getting out there. To kind of explain what interests me about the gym you help run is the geography kind of matters. So the Boulders is a climbing gym in central Saanich, which is a small rural town on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. It sits within the Greater Victoria area, so the population is about 370,000, which is similar for our American listeners to Ann Arbor in Michigan or Savannah, Georgia. So it's like kind of in a mid-sized area, but it's only about 55 miles from Vancouver, which is a huge population of about 2.5 million. Although because you guys are on other sides of a big body of water, it still takes about 2 hours, from what I understand, via ferry to get to the gym. So with that setting, can you tell me what did the climbing scene look like in Victoria and in central Saanich, where the gym is located, before the Boulders itself opened? Were there other climbing gyms on the island?
There was one, and that was Craig X, which still exists in Victoria. I think Craig X was one of the earlier climbing gyms to be developed in Canada. And there was definitely a very small but dedicated group of climbers outside, whether it was the bouldering down in the harbour, in East Esquimalt Harbour, or Horn Lake was definitely also less developed then. But there are definitely some climbers here and a level of interest before our gym got started.
Now, British Columbia obviously has a really big climbing culture, but on Vancouver Island, is there as much opportunity to climb outdoors? I've never spent time in the interior. Do you get cliffs that you can sport climb on, or much bouldering opportunity?
Absolutely. We have amazing outdoor climbing on Vancouver Island. What's interesting about the geology here is that Vancouver Island isn't the same as the Western Cordillera. It's a foreign piece of rock. We floated up somewhere while the continents from somewhere else while the continents were forming. So we have everything from massive granite fields to conglomerate to overhung Euro quality limestone, and there's tremendous mountaineering on the island. So you've got everything from top quality bouldering to sport climbing to trad and alpine.
Wow. So it's a fairly small climbing community, although it existed. Who had the original vision for the gym, and how did the first iteration of the Boulders come to be?
We've gone through quite a lot of iterations. The first was a teacher named Peter Mason, who still sits on our board. He had gone for a teaching workshop, a Pro D-Day team building workshop at Craig X, the local commercial gym, and he realized what a great bonding experience it was and decided to put a climbing wall on the outside of the school's small gymnasium. That was 1993.
And so this school is Stelly's, is the secondary school, Stelly's secondary school?
Yes, it's a grade 9 to 12 school in the middle of rural central Saanich.
Okay, so this gym started out as a joint, not as a joint effort, but it was actually built in as part of the school. Was it acting as a commercial wall at that point, or was it really just for the students?
No, it was just it's just for students after school and at lunch, and
okay,
it was on the outside of the school gymnasium, so it wasn't incorporated. It wasn't incorporated into the curriculum, and it wasn't commercial in any way.
Okay, would you be able to walk me through kind of the steps it took until we get to today's super gym that most people have heard of?
Sure. I think Peter Mason and Paula Day. Paul is still a teacher at the school, and he helped with the original construction. Of note, he's one of very few IFSC certified judges in North America, and serves as a judge on the IFSC World Cup circuit now, which is really neat for us. So Paul and Peter saw great benefit after they built the wall and saw many opportunities and started some programming. They started working with local hospitals to do therapy programs. They started an autism group with Queen Alexandra, and they decided that there was increasing demand and great benefit. And so they started talking about maybe expanding. And that's when I met up with them and helped them fundraise for the first expansion. We got that money in 2003 and opened as a not-for-profit, open to the public evenings and weekends in 2005. And that expansion was a 24-foot facility that added more top ropes, different terrain, and a bunch of bouldering.
And that section of the gym is pretty. It's fairly common to what a lot of people know. So it's I can't remember if it's a concrete finish or just a wood finish with a paint.
It's wood with textured paint, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's a fairly standard gym layout. You've got bouldering and top roping, and so it was at that point that you guys became a not-for-profit facility. Why was that decision made? I'm guessing it's because it was associated with a school that it obviously wouldn't be a private business at that point.
Yeah, I think I was looking at our programming and then watching what commercial gyms were doing, and we realized that not having to have a profit, but being able to have a different, would allow us to pursue different programs. The programs wouldn't necessarily need to make money. In order to do it, though, you'd need a pretty good team of volunteers, because it wasn't necessarily going to be it wasn't going to be the livelihood of anyone who was driving the facility. So we needed to have a pretty dedicated volunteer base and with a broad skill set, including knowing how to run a business. And what we sold people on, especially donors, was that the return on investment wasn't going to be cash. It was going to be a stronger community, a healthier community.
Now, it clearly was successful because sometime later, and I'll let you explain it all, but you went from a relatively small standard gym into the closest comparison I can make is that building that they store the space shuttle in down in Cape Kennedy. It's a massive rectangle that you can see from miles away with a huge retracting door that opens this huge 60-foot world-class gym up into the open. So everything clearly blew up pretty quickly. Can you walk me through how you suddenly decided, we need to make this a world-class destination for climbing?
God, sometimes I have really bad ideas. We were starting to turn out some great athletes by 2008. And in 2008, two of our athletes were selected to compete at the World Youth Championships in Australia. And I went along with them as their chaperone/coach. And on the trip, got to know Andrew Wilson quite well, who is a long-time coach of the youth team. And I asked him why Canada had never hosted, why North America had never hosted, why we were, looking at Australia and Ecuador. And he said, there's no facility in North America capable of hosting. And at the same time, we don't have a great training facility either. And I know at the same time that I was on the trip, our tiny little facility was facing significant challenges. We were so busy when we opened to the public on evenings and weekends that occasionally on busy nights we would have to turn people away. We had wait lists for our adaptive recreation programs. We had wait lists for our therapy programs. We were so clearly meeting a need, and we didn't have the space. So I said to Andrew and a few others in Australia, well, we can build something. Why don't we build something and host the World Youth Climbing Championships? And I think Andrew believed me when I said that I was going to go back home and do that. I think everyone else thought I was crazy. But I came back home, sat down with our board. It caused a bit of chaos on the board. We lost a few board members who didn't share the vision, sadly. But the board was pretty committed, and we started consulting with the school, with community groups, with everything from local search and rescue and fire and police to local theater and dance groups, and came up with a plan, and then started to raise the $3 million that it was going to require to expand.
Wow.
Yeah. So between the different expansions, I think the facility is probably worth about $6 million in total that we've raised to build it over the years.
That's unbelievable. Can you give us an idea of where those funds mostly come from? So when you talk about, I'm sure the operations don't generate that much money, especially if aren't paid. But when you talk about donors, are we talking about climbing-related organizations or private individuals?
I don't think we have very much money from climbing-related organizations whatsoever. And just to be clear, our operations are, we're operationally fiscally sound. We make a small profit every year, which gets plowed back into the gym. So our operations don't pay for any capital expansion, but we also don't receive grants to operate either. So it's nice. It's a good, solid business model. The money has come from a number of sources. We have some individual donors who are just amazing supporters of the community. There's a lawyer named Chris Considine who is also the Consul General for. He's got some ambassadorial role in Canada for Nepal, and he's a climber himself. When he had a stroke, he did his rehab with us. He recovered from a stroke climbing. He's been phenomenally generous. Mark Dickinson of Van Isle Marina, another stalwart of the Peninsula community, was also incredibly generous. We just found people who really understood our vision, that we weren't building a climbing facility. We were building a place for people to connect with the broader community.
That's incredible. It's really interesting. I think most of the people listening live in a for-profit world, and it's really neat to know that stuff is possible. In that vein, facilities like yours seem to be more common in the USA right now. You don't see a lot of gyms in Canada opening up that are, super walls that are also built in custom-designed buildings. We seem to be building a lot of smaller bouldering lounges lately. That seems to be the hot thing. Ontario in particular, it has a huge lack for tall facilities that can support proper lead comps or speed walls. Does the not-for-profit model make sense in a place like Ontario? So if there's somebody out there that is dreaming of a super gym in Ontario, is it reasonable to say, okay, I'll just do it not-for-profit? Is that kind of the easy path, or does it have just as many challenges as the regular way to do it?
I don't feel like what we've done out here is easy, but as I keep saying to people, if I can do it, anyone can. I do believe that it's important for the future of the sport in Canada, and for the future of our young athletes, that I think most major provinces should have a facility like ours, a not-for-profit facility that has the ability to meet many different needs, not just the profit motive. And I think Ontario, I know Quebec is now looking at building a facility based on hours in not-for-profit model. And I think Ontario, I think it would be amazing if they could do the same. Certainly, the not-for-profit model, not the size of the wall, but our model is spreading throughout British Columbia. There's a climbing academy and a small high school facility 100 kilometers north of us in the Cowichan Valley. There's another one in Vernon. And it's really neat to watch our ideas spread. They're looking at creating one in Williams Lake. It's just really cool to see at least our model being used by other British Columbia jurisdictions on a smaller scale. But yeah, I think there's a few reasons why I think our model makes sense. You can access government infrastructure grants. I'd say almost half of the funds in the current expansion came from provincial and federal grants for infrastructure. You're not eligible to get those if you're a for-profit organization. I think there's probably, now that we're an Olympic sport, there's other government resources that will be available. Certainly a national training center can't be a private organization. It can't be a for-profit organization. So as it stands now, I think not having that sort of facility will hurt a province.
I was curious. You said if you can do it, then anybody can do it. Just to give some people some background, before you got involved with the Boulders, who were you? What was your line of work, or what's your background?
Well, I've been doing the same type of work since 1994, so I'm virtually unemployable right now. I run a political and public policy consulting firm.
Okay.
My firm helps organizations either get the government to do something they're not going to do, or stop the government from doing something they're planning to do.
All right.
It is a bit of a unique background, particularly when you combine that with climbing.
Do you find those skills were uniquely helpful? Like, it sounds like you needed a lot of government money to help to make this thing happen, and maybe your skills at strong-arming the government possibly helped make it easier for you guys?
I facilitate good relations with government. I never strong-arm anyone. You know what? It helped with getting government grants, but I would say the more helpful part was actually getting the school district to buy in, because we built on their land, and that's a complicated thing to do. And the second thing I think my skills helped with was getting the height variance from the municipality of Central Saanich, because we do have the second tallest building on the peninsula. And prior to our height variance, there was a 3-year protracted fight, one municipality over from us, where the residents of the municipality sued the municipality over the building of a really tall water slide that blocked their views. So certainly, yeah. And I think the skill set was not as useful in terms of the large grants, but more so the finer details of creating consensus around a shared vision and getting people to buy in terms of just the concept, not financially, just actually backing the concept and the benefit to the greater good.
That's really interesting. In case some of the people missed it, we've been talking about this wall, the Boulders. That is, it's not just attached; it's built into it's built into a high school, so you can walk through, from lockers straight into a gym. And for me, that when I was in high school, that would be a dream come true. And because of that unique partnership and the fact that you're connected, Stelly's secondary school runs a climbing academy. So there's the opportunity to be a student in this high school and apparently earn credits just for climbing. Did that academy start with the creation of the wall, or was that something that came after the wall had been built?
I wanted to start the academy in 2007, 2008. I ran into some resistance from teachers who thought that we would be harming their jobs, and because the academy might compete with classes like outdoor leadership, and that we would just be pulling from the same amount of students. And I understand that change is challenging, and people, definitely want to protect the things that are important to them. So rather than pursue the academy at that time, we made the strategic choice of expanding and then starting the academy after. And by the time the expansion was close to opening, there was a clear desire from the school to start the academy. And what we found was the academy has grown so fast that rather than take away teaching jobs because we would compete with other classes, we're actually adding more teachers because of the success of the academy. So
what kind of students are eligible for this program? Like, do you have to apply for it, or is anybody enrolled in that high school able to just select that course when they're choosing their classes?
Anyone can select the course. We have different programming and curriculum depending on whether you're a new climber or whether you're an elite athlete. And the students in the academy range from those who think it's fun and challenging and would like to try it for a semester to those who are representing national teams and are there to integrate climbing into their school life. So we have athletes from Mexico, Germany, Italy, who are internationally competitive youth athletes and Canadian athletes as well, obviously, who participate in the academy as a way to make their school life work better with their competitive goals. Wow, I should also note the other thing the academy does, and that's really important to me as a climber who I learned to climb outside. And at the time when I was 18, I had a boyfriend who wanted to become a mountain guide. And so that's where my exposure to climbing started. I'm really glad that we lived through that, because arguably we shouldn't have. And an integral part of the climbing academy is teaching outdoor skills. And we have,
aside from this delay is I'm not used to. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
We have one of the teachers in the academy is also our facility manager, Derek Wilding. He is a amazing ACMG certified rock guide, and I think the only rock guide on Vancouver Island. But he's incorporated everything from rock rescue to anchor building to trad climbing and multi-pitch climbing into the course.
Now, aside from the outdoor climbing and the competitive climbing, so aside from the outdoor and competitive climbing, I noticed that you also teach some other stuff from the program. So when kids are in these classes, what else are they expected to kind of end up learning to do?
Well, they're learning to become good climbers and good stewards of the facility. If they want, they can get their climbing gym instructor level 1 through Thompson Rivers University, which allows them to become members of the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides and sets them up for a career in climbing. We help teach the theory of training so they understand how to create their own training programs if they want. We teach climbing technique. We teach nutrition. We do cross-training with them, and also set them up if they want to. For example, if they're not interested in competing, for example, they might be interested in becoming a judge and volunteering at our competitions. They might be interested in, they might be interested in route setting.
Yeah, that's excellent. For those kids, what does a school day schedule look like for them? I'm assuming they don't spend, half of their entire day in the gym, just like an hour a day. What's the kind of situation?
A block. They spend one block in the climbing program, so that would be an hour and a half. If they're not in the competitive stream, it's a very different program. If they're in the competitive stream, that block will be at the end of the day, so it seamlessly runs into their training program. And three days a week for those in the non-competitive stream will be actual climbing, and the rest will be either cross-training or classroom sessions on things like risk management or nutrition. Okay.
Are there additional costs to this program outside of whatever taxes you guys pay in BC?
It is $1,000 for a British Columbian student for the year. It can be waived if there's financial need, and that $1,000 also covers the out trips.
Oh, excellent! That's actually not bad considering the experience you get from it. I mean, if you just kind of subtract a climbing membership out of that at a regular gym, that's honestly not that much left after that. So that's pretty good.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can finish your thought.
If you look at the cost of doing the climbing gym instructor level 1, that's I think over $300.
Yeah,
that's included as well. I think it's tremendous value.
You mentioned that there were a bunch of students from places like Mexico and Italy. Are those students there for their entire high school career, or are they just visiting for a year? Because the program you're running sounds very attractive, especially if you want to spend a lot of time in one of straight up the best gyms on the planet. Are there kids that are making a 4-year commitment to moving out to Victoria just to climb?
Yeah, we have most of the foreign students come for the full school year. We haven't had one come for multiple years yet, but I think that's likely to do with the expense, the age, and just the homesickness, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Outside of the students, though, I'm always seeing pictures of, world famous climbers at your facility. Sean McCall obviously is a BC local. Mathilde Becerra, Lieber Hroza from the Czech Republic, and his sister Lucy seem to be living there. I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation,
in my basement.
But oh, really?
Most of these people are in my basement.
Yeah, Farnaz Esmelzadeh from Iran has also spent a lot of time there, and then you see pictures of Kai Leitner and Delaney Miller and all these folks up here at the gym. Obviously, you've got a great facility, but that's a long way from home, not just for the Americans, but for the Europeans and from Iran. That's a huge trip. So what about the facility? You can find closer world-class facilities in Europe or in Asia. Why are they coming to the Boulder?
What they've told me is that they really love our community. They love the fact that we cater to them. They love our partnership with the Pacific Institute for Sport Excellence, where our athletes are treated as if they're Olympic athletes and have all the sports science support that they would get if they were an Olympic athlete. So Sean can come in for testing. Our high-performance coordinator there, who's worked with multiple Olympic medalists, his name is Chris Hinton, and he's helped athletes fix ongoing knee and hip issues. He's helped them build general fitness that climbers don't have. They do all sorts. We have access to the sport lab there to do all sorts of testing, resting metabolic rate testing, etc. We cater to these athletes, and we can do that because we're not for profit. And we, I think, are one of the few facilities, maybe outside of Austria and Japan, that integrates a world-class sports science center with our programming.
Can you tell me a bit more about that? You said it's the Pacific Institute for Sports Excellence. Is that it?
Yeah, it's called PICE, and it's a fabulous facility about 10 kilometers away from our facility. Because of the weather in Victoria, because it only snows here once every 10 years or so. We get 1/3 the rain of Vancouver. Average temperature throughout the year is 10 degrees. Victoria has a huge amount of Olympic athletes here, especially in outdoor sports that don't require ice or snow. So Rowing Canada is based here. Golf Canada is based here. Rugby Canada is based here. Triathlon is based here. Surf Canada is based here. So we have, for a very small population, a very well-equipped sports science facility, and they do phenomenal work. They've got a cross-training gym that's open to the public, but they also have one that's set aside for elite level athletes.
Wow,
And they have athletic therapists who treat our athletes. They have ice baths to help recovery. They've got a sports lab. It's home to the local Own the Podium program. And we've been very, very lucky that Robert Bedauer, the president, and Chris Hinton, the high performance coordinator, have seen. I think they believed me when I said that we were going to be an Olympic sport, and they decided to, a few years ago, start working with us and our athletes. And their services and Chris Hinton's services are built into all of our competitive stream programming from 12 years on up. So that's something cool. I think that's unique. The other thing I think that helps is I keep a sort of a 3-bedroom climber suite in my house with a kitchen and a bathroom, and so anyone who would like to come and train here can, without having to pay for accommodation.
Oh, that's incredible. That's very generous.
But it benefits us so much to have our kids, regularly. There's a downside now, but our kids are used to training alongside Libor or Sean or Kai or Delaney, and Alan Jonas McRae, and you get the kids then go into our foyer and watch the World Cup streaming, and they know the athletes who are competing, and it makes that level of achievement possible because they can touch it and they can see it and they can see what it takes to produce that. So it seems like a very easy thing for me to do for a great benefit for our athletes.
And aside from what we've already talked about, I know I've seen in the past some Ontario kids go out to your facility for some camps where they get to climb alongside these incredible climbers. And I think I remember a route setting clinic or a route setting camp that was there. You guys do a lot of work to just help build skills for young athletes and then also budding route setters, it seems. Can you tell anybody if you guys have anything coming up in the year that people might be interested in signing up for or making a trip out to Victoria to take part in?
Well, 2 years ago in 2015, we did the first IFSC World Climbing Camp. The IFSC was looking at trying to figure out how to bring athletes together in the off season while growing the sport. And we proposed this, and Roman Kraniak, the former Slovenian coach, and I pulled it together, and it was a tremendous success. And we did a scaled back version of that this January. And again, it was, I think people had a lot of fun and learned a lot. And we were hoping to stick to doing that every other year. It definitely had a route setting component and a coaching component. Generally, we target top World Cup athletes who come out and hang out ahead of time with, this time it was an IFSC chief setter, Jan Zbranek, and our setting crew. And our setting crew got to set with Jan and learn from Jan. At the same time, they got to be in the lift with people like Anak Verhoeven and, a multiple World Cup winner, and build routes with her. And she got to learn what route setters were thinking, and the route setters got to learn what she was thinking. And they got to exchange information outside of a competition center. So we weren't planning on doing that next year, except because next year it sounds like we'll probably host national championships in speed and lead. And it also sounds that we are hosting in 2018 the Youth World Climbing Championships again. So in terms of organizing, I'm not sure I want to do another climbing camp next year. That said, we've had a request from Team Japan to bring their youth team out for the camp, and then have had multiple expressions of interest to be at it again. So I've got an organizing meeting tomorrow with my team around the Youth World Climbing Championships, and we'll probably decide then about doing another international event.
All right. Well, I don't
like a climbing camp.
I certainly wouldn't pressure you guys. You clearly have a lot on your plate, but I know a lot of people would be happy if there was one. But best of luck making that decision. See, I'm gonna let you go really soon because I know I'm sure you've got packing to do, and you're going to be out in Asia for a while. I've learned a lot just from this interview, and I knew a bunch of stuff beforehand, but there's clearly a lot more to it. I'm one of those guys out in an area that doesn't have a facility like this. And I know there are lots of places in the States and other parts of the world that, look up to the Boulders as kind of a model of a facility that they'd love to have in their community. But I'm curious, now that you've done it all, what part of the endeavor of the Boulders and the Academy, what do you think is the one thing that you'd really like to export out to other places, like Ontario, say, or underserved areas in the States?
I would say the not-for-profit community-driven model. That, to me, is the reason we're successful. It's the reason we can tailor programming to groups as diverse as adaptive and therapy groups, all the way to elite athletes like Sean McCall. And it's hard to find both of those things working successfully in one facility. And I know some commercial gyms do a bit of one or the other. I think our model allows us to cater to those people and cater to a wider range of groups, some who are there to train, some who are there to learn, and some who don't even realize that what they're doing is climbing. They're there for other reasons. They're there for looking after their health. They're not there to climb. I think it's being not-for-profit and community-driven that allows us to excel at those things.
Well, that's awesome, and I look forward to hopefully seeing more of that model spreading around the continent sometime soon. I want to thank you so much again for your time, and thank you, obviously, for all the work you've done out in BC. It's not just an important facility for Canada, obviously. It is a huge deal for athletes in North America and apparently around the world as well. So thank you very much, Kimanda.
Can I make a small pitch?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're looking to expand again, and we're in the process of working with the school district and the school to build 45 linear meters of World Cup bouldering. So
wow.
Stay tuned, and our goal is to be one of the few permanent facilities in the world that could host World Cups in all three disciplines while still maintaining our kind of making climbing accessible for everyone, regardless of ability or ability to pay.
Well, now I've got another question. If you guys are hosting the World Youth Championships in 2018, are you guys hoping to have the boulder wall done for that event?
No, because we don't have the runway's not long enough to put up the specialized buildings that we need or to go through the sort of permitting and fundraising processes. We will have temporary walls that may very well become the actual wall component of the new facility, but the building won't exist.
Okay, that's fair. I can't ask everything of you guys. You're clearly doing a lot already, but I'm looking forward to the World Youth Championships in a couple of years, and I'm very looking forward to a boulder wall, hopefully sooner than later. Thank you again, Kimanda Jarzebiak. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time too.
That's it for this week's episode of Plastic Weekly. Thanks to Kimanda Jarzebiak for answering my questions, and thanks to you guys for listening. Make sure you visit plasticweekly.com to find footnotes, references, and other bonus content related to this episode, including video from the Boulders opening day. Our theme music is by Javelin. Plastic Weekly is currently self-funded, and I'm not airing ads just yet, so please support it by subscribing on iTunes or Google Play, leave it a good review, and share it with your friends. You have no idea how much it helps the podcast. And I could never make Plastic Weekly without the support of Climbers Rock in Burlington, Ontario. You can read more about this episode and leave a comment at plasticweekly.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can send me an email to tyler@plasticweekly.com with your comments, concerns, questions, compliments. Just tell me you're out there. Somewhere. Good luck to everybody competing at Difficulty Provincials in Alberta, at the USA Collegiate Nationals in San Diego, and at the World Cup in Nanjing, China this weekend. We'll be thinking about you. Talk to you next week.